And I'd like to welcome to the channel Dr. Ron Yurko. He is an assistant teaching professor in the Department of Statistics and Data Science at Carnegie Mellon University and the director of the Carnegie Mellon Sports Analytics Center. Hey, Ron, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle.
Absolutely. So, as we just talked about, Ben Alamar put me in contact with you, and he's talked about this big data ball with me for several weeks now. And so, I'm really excited to talk to you about it and kind of how it's all unfolded. So, I understand it started 8 years ago. The NFL started it. So, kind of tell me, Ron, your involvement with the big data bowl in the NFL and how long you've been involved with it.
Yeah, so the NFL Big Data Bowl is this competition that was organized by Mike Lopez, who at the time, I remember when he started this, was the director of data and analytics for the NFL. I'm sure his title has changed. And what this is the NFL has tracking data for all the players on the field, and that's coming from chips that are in the shoulder pads as well as a chip in the ball. And that tells us where is everybody at on the field every tenth of a second. What direction are they moving in? What orientation are their shoulders facing? And so when the NFL started gathering that data, it was a little bit of like an arms race in a way for teams of, okay, we have all of that data now. What can we possibly do with it? How do we store all of that? I'm talking about massive amount of data being generated every game. Every tenth of a second in every play, where everybody is at on the field. It's incredibly rich data. And
Can I
so
ask
Mike
you, let me
Lopez,
ask you real
yeah,
quick, Ron, when were those chips implemented? Because to me, when I heard that and was reading about that, I was like, wow, I had no idea. So when did those chips get in place?
yeah, I think it was either 2016 or 2017 because
Okay.
when this first started, teams only had access to their data. That
Okay.
was the first role and limitation that the NFL considered. And teams then, in terms of evaluation of player movement and what's going on, you're very limited if you only have access to your own team's data. And then the NFL decided, you know what, just give everybody access to everything. And that created this moment of, okay, you know, teams need to be able to catch up and understand how can we use that? How can we tap into what Major League Baseball teams, NBA teams have been doing for years at that point of leveraging really rich data. And so Mike Lopez at the NFL, he had this initiative to what if the NFL hosts a competition every year where they release a sample of that data for the public to work on? And the primary goal of it from the NFL viewpoint is to build a pipeline into NFL teams, right? To get and attract people who are stats, data science, AI skill sets, and they get their hands on that data. They figure out how to work with that data, how to gather insights from that data, and potentially land a position with an NFL team. And it's fun more than just that. All sports teams are paying attention to who is entering this competition every year. And so it's been going on for a number of years now. I think 2018, if to check on that, might have been the first year that this took place. And there was my involvement has been as an academic researcher, where this first started when I was a PhD student. And conveniently for us as PhD students and academics, Mike Lopez had, in addition to this first version of this competition, set up like a special issue in a journal that Ben Alamar was actually originally a part of, the Journal of Quantitative Analysis in Sports. And we worked on this problem of trying to come up with like a stock ticker like value of expected points within every play of a football game based on the tracking data. And then in the years since, every year where that data gets released, I eventually became faculty, a professor here at Carnegie Mellon. My goal is I want to have students that are entering this competition because I have students that come to me about wanting to get a career, launch a job, get a career in sports analytics. And the NFL Big Data Bowl is sort of the sports analytics combine, right? If someone wants to work in sports analytics, they need to enter the Big Data Bowl. So every year for me, it's this process of I'm, getting interest from students. I organize. We have weekly meetings where we're just brainstorming what's going on. What should we do? How do we tackle this problem? Because one of the things that's really interesting with the Big Data Bowl is it tends to be very open ended, where there's just like a theme associated with the competition each year. And like the theme a few years ago was tackling, right? It's very open-ended. What could you do with tackling? And what we had was students that one batch of students looked at how the change in the ball carrier momentum, like the literally observed momentum based on their weight and their velocity toward the end zone. Could we create a new fractional version of a tackle rather than just a hard, subjective tackle statistic? And then we had another group of students that worked on the notion of setting the edge, of identifying, when does the defense cause a ball carrier to make a cut back to the interior on the path towards a carry? And all of these different types of things can be identified and analyzed with this very rich data set. And what the NFL does with this competition is in addition to cash prizes for people that are the finalists and the semifinalists in the years past, the finalists get invited to present their work at the NFL Combine at Indianapolis. So it's an awesome event. I was very fortunate a few years ago where we had 2 of the 5 teams were actually CMU students, which was a pretty cool moment for me. And then last year we had another 2 semifinalist groups as well. So this is a thing for me as a researcher and as an instructor. I view it as this amazing opportunity for students to learn a lot, get involved, and try to enter this competition. Where even if you don't become a finalist, from the viewpoint of someone that completed a project, they get to showcase what they've done. And so I wish more leagues would take the model of what the NFL has done here, because it's such a great way to tap into a lot of cool skill sets that people have that might not have gone on to work in the NFL before, and now they're showing and finding out that maybe they actually think American football is really cool, even if they never paid attention to it before.
Yeah, well, that's a question I was just going to ask you about is, do you find the students are focused on statistics and they just, by way of working with you, will go into working with the NFL? Or do you really want to find students who are fans of the NFL? I mean, obviously they have the knowledge of statistics and that's what they're there to study. But does it help if they are interested in a specific sport, in this case, the NFL?
It's a great question. It's definitely a mix, where for football, compared to other sports, football has a very particular jargon and understanding scheme that it can create a little bit of a barrier. I'd say that it also creates a great opportunity for if you have students that are extremely interested in football. And I had this student, he was a semifinalist last year, Abi, where he's a manager for the CMU football team. He talks to the coaches all the time about football play calling and scheme. And his entry and the things he does are very football scheme specific, right? Like he's a football addict. I will have other students though where they might be more interested in another sport, but they're trained to be statisticians or data scientists, and they know they want to tap into their skill set here to work with really rich data. And it could be now like the sports analytics space is this growing field. And, it's not necessarily just working for teams. There's tech companies that are investing in this space, right? And, the tech companies that are the data providers and all these different opportunities that are available for people. When I was a student as an undergrad, I had this great opportunity where I interned with the Pittsburgh Pirates back when MLB StatCast didn't exist, and my job was to manually track where's everybody at on the field at the moment the ball is being thrown. But when I was doing that, like that was for students in school, those were the opportunities working for teams directly. And then in very short number of years, given the change in technology and the available data that's available, right? Like it's surged with respect to these vendors and organizations that resemble what it's like working in tech, but you're focusing on sports problems, which also means you're going to get paid better than what it was before. And this competition between who's hiring who has just been great for the industry. And so more students I would say most of the students are not necessarily like super passionate about football that I have that enter this competition, but they're eager for an opportunity to work in sports, and they know this is the way to actually get, noticed.
Right.
It's the best way to get started for students.
You mentioned something a few minutes ago, Ron, that I thought was really interesting. How you talked about how, I mean, Moneyball was obviously established many years ago with the book and the movie, and for baseball, and then basketball. I know they've used different technology through the years, and then we have the NFL and the Data Bowl. But you mentioned how those two sports, MLB and NBA respectively, don't really have kind of a Data Bowl. So why do you think that is? Because it seems like it would be just the opposite, that those two sports would also have something like this. Because to me, having a 21-year-old daughter who's a senior at Texas State, knowing that she has a place that she can go present her portfolio and her work in a project that's highly regarded amongst all of these peers, it seems like it would just be a natural for the NBA and MLB to do something similar. Why do you think it is that they haven't done something and adopted what the NFL's done?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think part of it is they didn't have to, because it was around for longer. And the MLB, to their credit, has a lot of just freely available data. We can get pitch level data, we can get bat tracking data. Now, the downside though to that is because they just have that data freely available, and they don't have some incentive to bring people that might not be as familiar with it to begin with. You're just seeing sort of the same type of passionate baseball people working with that data,
Right.
and like the NFL model where you have this competition where you have good cash prizes associated with it. They have AWS is the big sponsor for this. You're gonna bring in folks that are like, oh, well, I'm really knowledgeable about how to use machine learning and AI. I can do something here. And so I wish the MLB would think about that. And they've done small sponsorships of like conference research conferences that are out there with competitions, but nothing to the scale of what the Big Data Bowl has. And the NBA used to run a hackathon, but they stopped that years ago. And I don't know if we're going to get see something else similar, because with these sports, one of the things I want to see that gets released, and we might see it down the road with the NFL Big Data Bowl before the MLB or NBA even considers doing this, is they're collecting skeletal pose data. So based on the cameras that are all around, whether it's the court or the stadiums, we're observing now not just dots on a field where everybody's at. We know where their elbow, their head, their kneecaps, all of the joints of their body. This You could recreate a skeleton, a 3D skeleton of the athletes at every fraction of a second. It's unbelievable data. So MLB teams have this, NBA teams have this. The NFL, they have these cameras that they announced were installed this year to automatically detect where the ball is at for first down marking. Those camera systems also give us the skeleton. So at some point, we're going to see images of recreations. Maybe it'll be in an AWS commercial one day where you'll see a hand up of a defender and like, oh, how does that impact the catch probability of a play? Right? It's amazing what data are being collected now, and I hope we get to see those samples released publicly. I'm a researcher and I'm just thinking like, well,
Right.
how do we model that data? What can you learn from that data that's meaningful? But the other aspect too of, it's going to be really fun data to work with and for students to get their hands on and just let creativity flow potentially. So hopefully, besides the NFL, we'll get some of these other leagues to maybe think about doing a competition with that type of data, because there's just so much of it that's being generated.
Right. Well, with the big data bowl, so I was in doing my research and talking with Ben actually about this. It talks about how this year is kind of a different data bowl in that they're trying to predict player movement versus before. So kind of just give me a sense of the progression of the data bowl over the last 8 years, because obviously you've been someone who's entered in the contest with your students. So kind of give me a sense of how it's changed the progress that's been made over these, I guess, last 8 years.
Yeah, so For most of the years of the competition, it's been a very open-ended, here's a theme, and you'll submit a type of notebook analysis. You create a new metric, you explain it, you have like a leaderboard of how you evaluated players, or just something that explores that data and gives insight about the theme. Whether it was look at special teams, look at tackling, look at pass rushing, very open-ended. One year, I think it was in the second or third iteration of the Big Data Bowl. They did a prediction contest of, given the tracking data at the moment of handoff, predict how many yards the running back's going to gain. All right, so that was a straight up a prediction contest, and they still had a track for students to enter and write up analysis. But this is hosted on the website called Kaggle, which is a machine learning prediction contest website. I believe it's owned by Google, where the idea is you will build models and you'll submit predictions of some kind, and you'll see where you stand on this public leaderboard. And then there will be this final batch of data that you never got access to, that then you'll submit your predictions for, that determine who wins. And the first version they did this, it was this group called the Zoo, that they were individuals that never paid attention to American football at all. I think they said like they didn't even know the rules of American football, but they were machine learning AI experts. And so they developed their own system and infrastructure to predict where the ball carrier is going to end up on the field, and they dominated the competition. All right. And so in the years past, there hasn't been a prediction contest until this year's theme, where there is two components. There is this prediction contest corresponding to what is happening when the ball is in the air. So what the competition has provided this year is you get access to every player on the field, excluding linemen, from snap up until when the ball is thrown. And then once the ball is thrown, you have to predict literally the path that the receiver is going to take to the ball, as well as a subset of defenders, right? Literally modeling their locations at the fractions of second between throw and when the ball arrives. And they give you where the ball ultimately arrived at. But it's a really interesting competition that you're going to have to predict over this period of time, what is the player movement? And then along with this prediction contest, they do have this open-ended track for students to enter, where what insight can we learn about what's going on while the ball was in the air? You know, what is happening to receivers? How are defenders reacting to while the ball is in the air? And then another new track that they introduced this year is called the broadcast track, which is open for everybody. And the idea for that is, can you create some type of visualization of that moment of time of while the ball is in the air that could be overlaid on a broadcast, or could something based on that data that can be informative for the general public, right? You know, imagine when you're watching the broadcast. I think a great example of this is what we see in Thursday Night Football with Prime Vision, right? Where they try to do like the dots of defensive alerts or whatnot, things that could actually be directly overlaid. So it'll be interesting to see what folks do with that this year, of who could come up with some novel way of delivering insight about like how defenders are reacting, or, you know, getting to the ball immediately, or covering the receiver all during that time while the ball is in the air. So it's going to be really interesting. It's different than years past. It's both of these components, this prediction contest, as well as some open-ended and a broadcast piece.
So where do you see, I mean, obviously this is 8 years that this started. And to me, it's just fascinating. This is also fascinating because I feel like it's just coming at breakneck speed. Just so much is happening so fast. So I'm just curious, Ron, you know, you've been in this space and covered this for a while, or been worked in it for a while. Where do you see things in like 5 years, 10 years down the road? Because it just feels like you just talked about with the Prime Vision. I watch that every Thursday night, and I'm fascinated by all the different things that they show and the different features. So where do you see the broadcast, the teams going in the future with AI and with the big data bowl? Because it just feels like it's just going so fast, and there's so many exciting things coming down the road.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think with AI tools specifically, and we saw this with the Big Data Bowl winners last year of, you can use these type of really flexible techniques that can handle this incredibly rich data where the teams, they have access to so much data,
Right.
right? The league, they have access to not just the tracking data and not just in the skeletal data, but the film itself, right? And you could use these tools and in conjunction with maybe information that's already been labeled and generated and automatically come up with parsing of what's going on at every play, right? Descriptions that are automatically generated, and things that speed up, make their lives more efficient, but then hopefully can lead to them coming up with new play calls, new schemes, and whatnot. And it'll be interesting to see too, is like how the league adapts and changes rules, and in connection to insights that teams have gathered. And the NFL is one that has been proactive on this, right? They're way more open to experimenting, I think, than other sports, as we've seen with something like the kickoff rule. I personally believe the skeletal, the pose data, that is the frontier that teams are going to be really excited to tap into in the years ahead. And they're all still figuring out, what questions can they answer with that tracking data? All right, that's still in the grand scheme of things of like how much data for what period of time. It's still relatively new. And then for the NFL teams, what they really want is they want all of that data at the college level, right? And that's where there are these tech companies that they're trying to create that data based on video feed because we don't have the chips and the shoulder pads for college players. And
Interesting.
so it's the collection of that information and how then this technology goes down this tree of, get it to the college level, and then I'm sure it probably in Texas will be the first place where you'll see tracking data at the high school level, right?
Right.
So it's only going to increase in terms of how much data is available, and more and more teams are going to be invested in this. And I think one of the things you see it is like with the growth of AI, it's been interesting is people that might not have been receptive to Moneyball are more receptive to things like, wow, this AI is incredible. And part of it is how you can build tools that
Mhm.
feel interactive and chat like, right? It's not just spitting out tables of numbers or charts of different kinds. It's an interface that you can have for a non-technical person to interact with, that they feel like, oh, this almost feels, more human-like engagement in a way. And so we're going to see more and more NFL teams become invested, and it's going to at some point down the road, you'll have an NFL team that will probably look like an MLB team. The Los Angeles Dodgers have a group dedicated to analytics R&D of over 40 people along that number. It's a small tech company, and so NFL teams, they're nowhere near that scale yet, but 5-10 years, it wouldn't surprise me if they are.
Which, when you think about it, you just talked about it a while ago in the very beginning of our conversation. The NFL is way more complex than basketball. There's 11 on 11 versus 5 on 5 versus baseball, where it's one pitch, one on one.
Yep.
So to me, it seems like that would be natural for them to want to explore that. Something else you said a few minutes ago was basically how it could trickle down the technology. And to me, that's really interesting because I'm thinking top tier of the NFL. But you're right, it makes complete sense because the NFL wants to be measuring metrics or using metrics that are like to like what they're using in colleges to use it.
Yep.
So that makes complete sense. So what do you see on the college front as far as like teams, maybe not so much the skeleton, but just teams adopting different AI tools? I'm sure the University of Texas is probably at the forefront. They're in my own backyard. I'm going to explore that. But I just was curious from your standpoint, what do you see happening from a college standpoint?
So colleges now, I'll say this because of NIL and all of the changes that happened these past few years, right? It has changed dramatically where college football programs and college, athletics departments, they realize they need to start to resemble professional teams with regards to analytics groups, right? Actually having individuals with AI skill sets, stats, data science knowledge who they can work with that data, aggregate that data, generate insights from that data, and that can then be used to, in this era of perpetual free agency, right? Identify talent and identify, oh, what's the value of this player? What's the type of NIL deals and management do they need to have, right? And it's at the college level, and I don't know the sense of how the variance that's there still of, we might have the top tier programs that really jumped in this immediately because they have the funds, they have the capacity to do so, versus other D1 programs that are just like, oh my goodness, how can we possibly catch up, right? How can we get started even? So it's been interesting where the tech space that I mentioned of these companies, college, because of how many programs are there, all right, it's a great business opportunity.
Sure.
These organizations, such as Teamworks, they really service college programs and things ranging not just from like insights you can generate from tracking data in games, but nutrition, fitness, and all sorts of things that are just beneficial for athletes in these programs. It's a big market, and you're going to see, and I'm starting to see this already. College programs, they're hiring data scientists, machine learning engineers, and AI specialists because they need to get caught up with the type of general manager like front office that has to be built now. Right?
Right.
College football is no longer just about recruiting. Right? It's recruiting players who are on other programs constantly now, right? And managing the money that goes with that. And yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think we are seeing uh, former NFL coaches go to that college level. Now, UNC might be a whole other can of worms, but we are seeing the individuals that, well, they had that experience or they worked with people at the NFL level. They don't have to be as necessarily invested as the old school ball coach style of recruiting high school players. It's now, oh, give you X amount of money or some NIL deal arrangement or whatever, however that works now, right? That's recruiting. And that's all that is too, is generating data, right, repeatedly of how these transactions took place, what type of value worked well for players from certain parts of the country and whatnot. It's all opportunities then for integrating technology to build better roster management systems.
Well, it's an exciting space. It's an exciting time. I'm really excited to be covering it. And I really appreciate your time, Ron. You've been really insightful in explaining the Big Data Bowl and you guys' participation. I wish you the best of luck in this year's, the 2026 Data Bowl. And we'll hopefully be talking to you later down the road.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle. Great
Absolutely,
talking
Ron.
to you.
Take care.